We're at that time of year where winter is ended, sort of, kind of, but spring really hasn't started. Even though some things are blooming, it's just windy and moist. I know a lot of you enjoy that word, right? Let's say it again, moist. It's really a pause, a time where we just have to persevere because something is coming. We don't know what it is. And that's pretty much where we are this week with our card of the week, which is the Nine of Wands. Welcome, Sunflowers, to Good Journeys Tarot. We are, of course, going to be talking about the Nine of Wands this week. However, before we do, as we always do, I'm going to share what's been going on with me and my tarot journey. I did, if you saw on Instagram yesterday, get some happy mail. And the deck that I got was one that doesn't need a cat. It is the Robin Wood Tarot. The box doesn't want to stay shut, so I've had to seal it with my little hair tie, which is coordinated in green. So I have put off getting this deck for a very long time, simply because it just reminded me a lot of the RWS imagery and was really looking for decks that had a unique and different perspective, and also decks that were diverse. And this being solely based on a specific time frame and people, it's not very diverse. But I will say, looking through it, there are some cards in here that are among my favorite ever. And there are also some cards where I feel like they were just a little bit too specific. Similar to how the Thoth does, they focus on a specific idea behind a card and don't deal with the greater context of the entire card, but simply one idea that is associated with that context. I also did get the book, which Tarot Stashes recommended every time anyone has brought up the Robin Wood. It did give me some insight into what she did with some images that kind of bugged me, and that's how I knew she took very specific approaches with some of the cards that are not. I am going to have to rustle my cat. um, that are not what I would want to have in the card, right? That I don't like cards that are so specific that it it doesn't really reflect the overall meaning of the card, because a lot of the cards in tarot have very broad meanings and a lot of context in them, based on their correspondences, and sometimes particularly with the Thoth and with other decks, like this, when you get cards where they latched onto one key word and the image is all about that key word, and we miss the rest of the context of the card, which can be unfortunate. Now, I will tell you, this guidebook is actually really well done. The majority of it is actually about the deck. And while there is a little bit about how to read the tarot, it's at the back of the book, which is really awesome. The other thing that I've really enjoyed is the foreword and the true history of the tarot chapters in here. So if you get this book, read those chapters. They're amazing. You're going to love them. So that's what came in new this week. That I have been trying to get to know a little bit. I will be having a conversation about that deck with two people who have worked with it for a long time and love it, in June. So look forward to that in the near future. But this week, we are going to be talking about the Nine of Wands. So this card is one that, surprisingly, when I looked at my deck, has varied meanings. And people tend to choose to latch onto a certain idea for it and project that in their cards. So they're not all just like this Smith Waite image, right? And but some of them are. Welcome, Ange. Glad to see you here this morning. So this is the Slow Tarot. I didn't show this one when I was posting on Instagram this week because this was one of the cards in my week ahead reading. I kind of felt this way all of March, but particularly this last week, I just feel like nothing's happening. I feel like, I made it through a thing and now I'm just waiting. Um, there is definitely a pause feeling with this card, and it comes across in some of these. Hi, Amy. Welcome. So glad you could make it today. Here is the Lost Hollow Tarot, which actually incorporates that Thoth imagery of the arrows, which you can kind of see there against the moon. I love the fiery energy of the hair. This card is called Fortitude, or Strength, in the Thoth and some other decks. And that is something that really speaks to me personally when I look at this card. And the This Might Hurt Tarot has probably been the card that resonated with me the most. It's that idea of, you know, putting in the long hours studying in college or high school, or even like when I wrote the article recently, and I didn't wait to the last minute, but I just struggled to get through it. And so a lot of what I was trying to accomplish with my card was what's in this imagery, but I went for the laptop versus the books because that's really how we write and study these days more often than not. I loved in the Modern Love Tarot how she utilized the mother, who is just like, my kids will not stop arguing, that kind of like, I'm going to make it. She's telling herself, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to get through this, kind of perseverance pictured there. Um, as well, this one from the Urban Tarot, and a modern scene, the juxtaposition of the homeless person in front of the halls of justice, um, denoting that idea of fortitude or strength, that idea that things are not great, but we're still on our feet. um, this is the Edvard Munch Tarot for Relationships, which I do love. And sometimes I use this deck and sometimes I don't, because the images are not specifically drawn for the tarot, but are actually taken from his artwork. And in this case, the keyword they chose was stuck, which can be a meaning of this card in some context. That person who is not really going anywhere. They've been through the battle and now they're just waiting for what's next. They're at the gate, so to speak. But the idea of this woman exposed, and maybe there are people drawing her, painting her, or just oogling her, but she's stuck, and she's going to stand there regardless, and she's going to um, just be right. Was an interesting idea. Um, this is a card that I almost didn't show because after I read the Little White Book, which I had to, I was like, oh, trigger, 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 trigger for me, at least. So here we see a Sphinx cat who has been used to practice tattoo work. And so there was this idea for her, at least, in her explanation of the card, that, the cat has been abused, but the cat is still beautiful. And that was kind of the direction that she went with the Mystic Garbage Tarot here, is that, despite what the cat has been through, that the cat is still surviving and thriving and beautiful. This is my least favorite image of the Nine of Wands ever. I really wish I could just take this card out of the Sorcerer Beto deck, but then I wouldn't have but 77 cards. And it is the image of the set bone, which is it does speak to that card, but this grosses me out, even though it's not really a graphic image. It has always bugged me, and I just don't like this card. We all have our preferences, right? I find as I work through the cards that sometimes the Marseille or Thoth speak to me more than the Smith Waite imagery. Um, and this is one of those cards where it kind of does in a way. This is the Marseille. This is, of course, from the New Choice Tarot de Marseille. The idea being is that there were 8 wands, okay, in the previous card. Those 8 wands, that movement, that action, that symmetry, and then all of a sudden we have a ninth one, that wine that kind of like blocks that movement. It intersects and gets in the way, and causes us to stop. And so that is immolated in the Thoth. And I love how the Thoth, they use the arrows, which kind of hints back to that movement of the 8. And then they interjected that ninth wand that kind of stops the movement. And you'll see how they utilize the moon there as kind of a rounded arrow, denoting how the moon energy in Sagittarius kind of brings like a slowness, a kind of less active meaning and feeling to the card. And I really do love this image. But my favorite image is actually from a deck that is relatively new to my collection, and it does offer a different type of reading for the card, which is in the context of the astrological correspondences of this card. This deck actually has different astrological correspondences, which I've not yet studied, and I'm not sure that I hold to. But this is the Tarot of the Holy Light. And I don't know if you can see it. There's creatures that are cowering in the cave as the volcano erupts. And the idea behind this card is shelter and finding shelter. And there is this aspect of the moon in Sagittarius of, you know, using our emotion and our reason to find that comfortable place, right? To take a pause and to rest and to let things happen, okay, so to speak, which we do kind of get with that RWS image. But I just loved how this was depicted, with the wands there in front, and then behind the wands you'll see the creature. I think it's a fox or a bear in the cave while the volcano erupts in the background. And I really did kind of love this. And I like that kind of aspect of the card of shelter, because that is something that we get with whoops, our Smith Way image. This person has built up a wall, a defense, so to speak, which they are standing by, at least in some interpretations of the card. This is called the Lord of Great Strength in the Golden Dawn. And so, and it's the moon in Sagittarius. So the moon being about reflection, Sagittarius being about the explorer, the like person who's like going out into the world and trying to like um learn things and move, and so the moon kind of halts that movement, which is kind of what we're getting here. This is where with this person, this explorer has been out there, and now they have kind of gotten exhausted. They are injured, tired, have just been put through it, and but they're standing their ground. And so it does lead that moon in Sagittarius leads to building us a platform or a space, a fortress, as it were, to take care of ourselves, right? While we await what happens next, which is what we see with the putting up of the 8 wands in the background and holding the one. We have built a defense, so to speak. We're guarding the gate, though we are paused, though we're taking that rest. Um, this image is often associated with the wounded warrior. In the TDM, the Tarot de Marseille, this card is the win or die card. So it's like, you've lost the battle, but you're going to win the war. This is the pause in the middle, right? You've been through it, and what comes next, we don't know yet. So the idea is with the TDM is that you do the right thing, um, and be yourself to succeed, to get through this, to go onward to the victory. Um, so for me, this is about, because this is the fire suit, it's about being inspired to fulfill your dream. The nines are all are like almost being completed. That's like, we have everything we need at this point. We are almost there. And we're taking that pause before we actually win, right? Before the next push. We have to rest, we have to recuperate, so to speak. So we often see this card associated with perseverance, with defense, with dedication, determination, or even being protective. One of the things that in the Robin Wood that she talks about, and where her focus really is with her card meaning, is that we're waiting for it. This is the pause, and that's really the synopsis of what she had to say about it. Alternately, in the reverse or the shadow side, this is a card where we possibly would be facing defeat. Um, of giving up, of obstacles, adversity. Interesting idea that came up in a couple of places in the positive aspect of the card. A possible meaning of the card that I thought, yeah, no, that's totally a shadow side thing, was paranoia. Like, so this person's in the card that's stationary, the person's eyes are moving back and forth, looking for what's next, right? And so, yeah, I think in the shadow side that we could see this as paranoia. I'm not sure that that's really a upright meaning of it. This also could be in reverse about dropping our guard, and about exhaustion. There is a certain aspect of tiredness in the upright position, but it's taking time to rest, really, from that exhaustion. Welcome, Anna. Anna says that when she sees this card, that she thinks of patterns she's repeating and whether they've been useful. Um, Interesting. I suppose that relates a little bit. Get down, sugar. Um, I could see that. Although I'm uncomfortable with that idea now because of something I had come up in another reading this morning. Don't you hate it when tarot gets personal on you? Okay. So I do want to take an opportunity to look at the card that I created this week. I will say that I struggled with this mostly from an image standpoint, finding the pieces that I wanted for it. But I also struggled with it in that I really felt like I loved the Thoth image. And yet I wanted it to be connected to the Smith Way. And then I really loved that This Might Hurt image, which kind of is a really good modern day feeling for this card. And so I ended up with something that was a little bit of a combination, and it could change in the days and weeks to come. And this is it. Um, you'll see where I have this is a person at a laptop. They're trying to write or study or whatever the case may be. And they really are just not, it's just not happening. They're exhausted, right? Hence the coffee, right? To keep themselves up. And in the back, you'll see the poster on the wall, and the poster being basically that Thoth or Marseille image, which I really liked for this card. It really gets the idea of the moon in Sagittarius. And so I decided to bring that in. I drew on the energy of the Queen of Wands, bringing in that the background from that card, and because I realized all of the wands up until this one were outdoors in my deck. I never actually did any wands that were indoors except for that queen, and so I used the background from the queen there to create the wall and everything for this particular image. The hardest part for me in this image was finding a chair for the person to sit in. I just couldn't get it to work right. And no matter what chair I chose, they either looked too cartoony or they were too realistic. They were the wrong proportions for the body that I was using. It was just really weird finding the right chair. But this is what I ended up with. I'm relatively happy with it, though, it could change by the time I decide to print a copy of the deck. I might find other images that work better for me in the days and weeks to come, which has happened. Another thing that has happened periodically for me is that I find imagery that works for cards I already have in my mind, cards that we haven't drawn yet. And I thought I would just show you some of those that I've started. I actually have three that I've started. Some are more a rough draft than others, just to give you an idea of what's happening in in the background. In addition to studying the card of the week, sometimes I come across an image while I'm working on this card, for example, and I think about another card that I want to create. One of the cards, probably the first card I ever did, which is featured in another video that I will try to remember to put in the comments about creating a card. Um, was the sun. And I explained in that video why I did the sun the way that I did. I definitely think there are going to be some changes to this card, particularly probably the images that I'm using. But these are basically the idea that I'm going for in the card. I've also been playing with the Two of Pentacles because Two of Coins. This is a card where I really want to draw on the Thoth and Marseille energy, similar to how I did in this Nine of Wands. Um, and right now, this is what it looks like after many hours playing late one night. But it could change. But just so you know, I'm not just working on the one card, but every now and again, I'm inspired to work on others. This card, the Two of Cups, is actually one that I've had in my mind for over a decade. I still have some work to do on it. Uh, I've got to play with the hair and clothes on this figure, and I'll probably play some more with the background. I originally wanted it to actually be a library building with the caduceus on the library wall, but I couldn't find an image that I liked, so I went with the bookcases. This is actually a specific scene also from my life that is why I immediately went to create it. And so I am playing with other cards as I go through this process of creating, and I thought I would just share some of those with you, and let you know what I'm thinking and where I'm headed with some of them. Um, So Anna asked about the 10 of Wands. Anna, if you go back to the hashtag 78 cards in 78 weeks, I've actually already finished the 10 of Wands, which is outside. Um, and it relates to a specific scene from my life. And so if you want to go back and look at that, it's hashtag 78 cards in 78 weeks. If you go to my main page for my channel, like, subscribe, and click the notification bells, you will actually see all of those videos are actually in a playlist. So far, I believe we are up to 28 or 29 cards. And more to come. In fact, right now, we are going to be drawing the card for next week. And I do welcome anyone who has a channel or does not have a channel, even, who would like to chat about a card, any card, as it's drawn, or a random card when it's drawn, to join me. Um, yeah, well, it's great to have you here. So Ange is here. Ange is going to be joining me on April the 10th for a card. She agreed without knowing what card it is at all. Amy actually was here to talk about the Three of Swords, I believe it was. And she will probably be back again before it's all over with. And so, in fact, Tarot Stash made his second appearance last week when we were talking about a card I forgot to show you. I did actually update the Seven of Cups. Last week we looked at it. I had several color variations and wasn't happy with any of them. I did finally end up creating the cushions in a blue that actually is a shade of the wall color, believe it or not. It just gets more teal the darker you go, and made the person a black silhouette like many of the other cards. At the recommendation of Strength Reversed. So anybody who is not should go over to Facebook and join Good Journeys into Tarot, which is a Facebook group where I talk about the cards and what I'm doing with them and ask for your feedback. And I do value that input, and would love for everyone to be there who is watching this series and to give me feedback as we're working through the cards each week. Glad you like that, Amy. So, Ange, if the Seven of Cups is one of your favorite cards in a tarot deck, tell me, how do you like this card? And don't hesitate to be honest. Okay. I don't mind criticism. I'm a little bit disappointed I haven't gotten more criticism as I've worked through this project. Hopefully more people will join the group, and it is private. So you don't have to worry about anybody seeing anything in there. So feel free to share what you want to share. So let's pull our card for next week. Don't you love how I get sidetracked? Oh, wow. I was just thinking to myself about this card. It's one of those cards that I'm like not sure how I will depict or what I will do. And it actually has been a focus for me for a couple of months personally in my life. And that is the Chariot, another card that is associated with the moon, this time with Cancer as well. So it should be interesting to see what direction I go with this card. Some of the major arcana, I have actually gone with a very traditional type imagery, and some of them I have gone in a very different direction. Like I did with the devil. The devil I actually renamed to the shadow and went in a completely different direction, similar to how Robin Wood did in her deck. But yeah, so next week it will be the Chariot. We'll be getting a little bit of that dichotomy thing going on with the two Sphinx. We'll be talking about that canopy as well as lots of things about this card. I've actually spent a lot of time studying this over the last couple of months as it has presented itself as my card of the year. I never drew it. I never like calculated it as my card of the year. It just kind of keeps popping up. It's like, yeah, you got to work with me. I'm going to influence 2022. So you got to pay attention to me. And it's been that way since late December. Um, Although in the last couple of weeks, I've had another stalker card. Watch it show up after this one, right? So next week, it'll be the Chariot. If anybody wants to join me chatting about the Chariot, showing off your favorite cards, do reach out to me and let me know. I'm so glad that all of you are here, especially our new viewers. Again, do join the Facebook group if you haven't already. Good Journeys into Tarot. And speaking of which, if any of you know why I don't see the event button on my page, let me know. I've tried everything that Facebook has to offer me and Google has to offer me, and that button just will not show up. So I've been posting in Scott's Scorpio Moon's tarot group about these events, and he's fine with that. He invites everybody to, but I'd like to be able to post it in the Good Journeys into Tarot group as well, and it's just not allowing me. All right, everybody, thank you for being here. Until next time, good journeys.